are your key to self-empowerment. You need to learn how to cope with them and not let them dominate and affect you. This quote has some good key points, but it doesn't actually tell you how to deal or cope with them, which is what matters ultimately. So today I'm going to be outlining the tips you guys need to effectively deal with all the difficult people in your life. Because I know that every single one of us has at least one person that is always getting on our nerves, but not every single one of us knows how to effectively deal with that person. I'm going to be informing you on the 3 different options you have on how to deal with the people, and also touch on one key fact to keep in mind while doing so. First and foremost, you have 3 options. You can choose to accept, change, or reject. It's important to keep in mind that there isn't really a right option. It's kind of all just based on whatever is the best choice for you and whatever situation you're in personally. If you do choose to accept, that means that you're acknowledging that the other person isn't going to be changing. No matter how much time passes, they're just always going to be difficult, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you're just accepting it, and you're going to move on and not ever bring it up again. You're kind of at peace with it. This is the most passive of the 3 options. So I would recommend that you use this for work-related situations, such as with coworkers that are being difficult, just because it's not necessarily the best idea to be confronting your boss or a coworker like aggressively about how difficult they're being. So if you just choose to accept it, you can move on and probably keep your job. The second option would be to change. If you do choose to change, it means that you're changing yourself and not the other person. This is the most difficult of the 3 options because a lot of people, and I feel this way too, don't like the fact that they have to be the one doing the changing, not the other person. It's kind of something that's a little uncomfortable because you don't want to be doing all the work when you're not the difficult one. It doesn't really seem fair. And I can actually relate to this personally because I consider my dad to be a really difficult person. He's always been that way, and it was really frustrating while growing up because I kept thinking that if I thought about it long enough, I could get him to change somehow. And obviously that didn't work, and it wasn't until recently that I realized I needed to be the one doing the changing. And I needed to change by seeing how I viewed him and how I reacted to different things that he did. So a perfect example would be cleaning our dishes in our house is like a really big routine, and he's a little bit OCD about it. Like, I'm not even kidding, it's kind of ridiculous. He does it every single day, probably like 3 points during the day. It's a little crazy. And no matter how many times I try, I always seem to be doing it wrong. And it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how you can wash dishes incorrectly. It's like hot water and soap, but I seem to be doing it wrong. And before, it would really get to me. I would get really upset about it, and I would get super mad and not talk to him for a little bit, and now I'm able to just let it slide. It's really helped our relationship a lot in the past couple of years. You do have a 3rd option, and that would be to reject. Reject means that you are going to kind of cut your relationship off with the other person. And this is pretty drastic, but it is a good option for anyone that's in a situation that's kind of becoming unhealthy. If the other person is affecting your well-being, it might be the best choice to just cut ties with them and move on. And if all of those 3 options don't seem to be working for you, there could be another reason why, and it might be time to look at yourself and reflect on your own role in the difficult relationships you're having. You might need to be considering the possibility that it's not the other people that are difficult, it's yourself. And I think that this is something that's often overlooked just because a lot of people are uncomfortable placing the blame on themselves, especially if they're not even aware that they're doing it. Like, they don't know that they're playing a role in the difficult relationships that they're having. But it is worth acknowledging if the other 3 options don't seem to be helping or anything like that. To further support this, I do have a quote that says, it's pretty popular, it says, "If you want to know the type of person you are, take a look at who you attract." And that just means that if you're constantly attracting difficult people all of the time, it's probably a sign that you're not so easygoing yourself. So today I've talked about the different options you can take when trying to deal or cope with a difficult person in your life, as well as reflecting on your own role and being self-aware of the role that you play in the difficult relationships that you do have. Because I know we all have difficult people in our life, whether it's coworkers or significant others or friends, or more importantly, family. I hope that this information has been valuable to you and you guys can apply it the next time you're around one of them, especially with the holidays coming up.
All right, well, you start with a clear statement that's kind of an attention device. It's unattributed, and you do clearly state what your goal is going to be. There's a sort of a preview. It's a vague preview, but we know that we're going to be getting some advice in 3 different categories about how to deal with these sorts of difficult people or difficult situations. So that part's fine. The content of the material, the examples, the 3 different categories that you had, they're relatively clear, and you've got a couple of examples on each of them, but there doesn't seem to be much research there. I didn't hear any sources being cited on any of this. So you've got some good personal examples that I think make it interesting and easy to understand in a couple of the contexts. What kind of tendencies people have, for instance, might be something that you would look at to see whether or not they're actually capable of doing some of the things that you're talking about. Changing themselves, for instance, and learning to accept that they aren't going to be able to change the other person seems to be one of those things that would be very difficult for most folks. They're going to look at the other person and think, well, that's the person who has the problem. They're the one who needs to change. And even though you've got a good example about how unlikely that is to occur, I did think that you had a good example about how your changing in response to it kind of compensates. Like I said, that's just a singular experience, and I think that you could maybe find some more information to support those points. The presentation issues, I think, are very solid for the most part. You look at the audience, your gestures seem like they are inclusive, they're part of the process of speaking. Your expressions seem pretty animated. I thought that you had some good transition gestures while you were speaking. You had the notes in your hands, you weren't overly dependent on them. Maybe sometimes your voice is a little bit quiet, but I think that's mostly just the way your voice is. It's not so much that you aren't projecting or that you're not energetic. It's just that's your personality, and I think that you do a pretty good job with all of that. I didn't see any obvious anxiety issues. Like I said, I think a little bit more research would have strengthened it, but the examples that you had were pretty solid, and I thought that you had a very good summary as well. Thank you.